Facebook. My
Hey,
name's
Facebook and
Dani.
world.
Hello. I'm our casting director for best8, which is a new company, and we are talking with Rachel Leigh Dolan, who is the founder and artistic director of best8. So we're just gonna kind of learn more about it, have a conversation, and hope that you are excited by it, and we'll tell you a bunch of ways to support us and get it going. So let's start off with, what is best8, Rachel?
Well, first of all, what I was just thinking as you were like introducing me is that I have been roping Dani Ebbin into projects as an associate and as an assistant for like 4 years now. I'm not really sure when the first time I was like, how about you come and do this thing for me? So thank you for always showing up. But best8 began pretty much a year ago. I choreographed a concept video and just got a lot of attention, and I loved like, it got a lot of attention online and people were excited by it. I had people reaching out saying that was cool, I would love to do something like that with you. And we're seeing a lot of concept videos happen right now for dancers because we're all craving ways to be creative. But I knew I wanted to make more dance films and more dance videos. And COVID happened and I was in rehearsals to create a video and everything got canceled and stopped. And I started noticing just the way that our industry was falling apart. Felt like we needed ways to sort of ignite some creativity and get excited about making art and making dance specifically. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to fundraise money and create more of these videos, but in creating more of these videos, bring on more people and diversify every aspect of it, from choreographers to dancers, just making it a really equitable and inclusive and diverse group of people coming together. And that's where it kind of came from. And then anybody who's a dancer knows we do this stupid thing that says, hey, Dani, give me your best8. We obnoxiously count 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the person has to improv for 8 counts. And so like a light bulb went off and I was like, that's it. I'm going to make all these dancers do best8 and an interview of 8 questions to start to get to know creative people in a way that we don't usually get to know them, especially performers, especially dancers. They're sort of like seen and not heard. So that's what it is. Right now, we are an artist project. We are fiscally sponsored by New York Foundation for the Arts, meaning that I'm operating as a 501c3, despite not having nonprofit status yet. The goal is to eventually do that and create best8, the nonprofit. So right now, best8 is an artist project. We will be producing 5 videos in the next year, 5 films, choreographed and performed by up and coming choreographers, sort of as an incubator for making new material. And I'm really, really adamant about featuring dancers that we maybe haven't seen before, some new faces and new bodies and new people, to create socially conscious films that reflect the world we live in, which is much more diverse than what we see on stage, especially on Broadway. So that's a really long version of what it is.
Well, it's just exciting, and it you can tell it's also like from the heart, based on your experiences, and sort of like what's going on right now. So I guess that's kind of like the next big question on my mind, really, and for everyone else. I think it's important to know more about you. Growing up in DC, living in New York, going back to DC, now back in New York. Can you kind of walk us through that, your journey as, a performer, then choreographer, how you sort of stumbled into that, and maybe that will give us more of a background, paint the picture a little bit more.
For sure. A long, long time ago, I was born. I was born in Connecticut. My family, my parents were both from New York, native New Yorkers, and my siblings and I were born in Connecticut. through my dad's jobs, we ended up in Northern Virginia, which is where I grew up in the DC area. And as a performer, I got my first professional gig when I was 14. I performed in a production called Dreams that was written, directed, and choreographed and starring, no, she wasn't in it yet, Debbie Allen. And then 2 years later, I performed in Pearl, which Debbie was in. And so that's when I got my feet wet in performing. And actually, by the time I was probably 18 or 19, I really knew I didn't want to do the dancer in New York thing. I had moved to New York to go to college. I went to a couple auditions that went really well, and I got feedback that like my body type was not right. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to focus on teaching. I started teaching in high school, and I'm going to focus on becoming a choreographer. I really, really like creating. So I worked with like student-run theater group with my best friends, and we started making shows that were really probably not very good. And fortunately, before the time of TikTok and viral videos, and we have no documentation of it, so we just know that it happened. But it really inspired me that I loved doing that. So after I graduated from college, I ended up moving back home. We were in a recession right before the housing bubble burst, and jobs were really difficult to come by. I was wanting to work in development and work for a dance company and sort of be in the world of dance, or write for Dance Magazine, and everything was just not hiring. So I moved home to apprentice with my dance teacher and learn how to choreograph. And that's what I did. So I moved home and I started teaching and working with her on the shows that my dance studio does, which are sort of dance musicals. And it was great. I did that for 5 years. Originally, I was only going to do it for a year and then just, move back to New York. It was always the plan to come back to New York. And I ended up being in the DC area for 11 years, living in DC for most of that time. And I, full disclosure, like completely stumbled into choreographing for professional theater. A friend from high school was an assistant director at a theater, Keegan, which is where you and I met. And she knew that they were looking for someone to choreograph a production of Cabaret. And she posted something on Facebook saying, hey, a theater I work with is looking for a choreographer, specifically someone who has like some understanding of Fosse. And so I texted her and I was like, Abby, I emailed her, called her. I don't even know if we were texting then, who knows? And I was like, I'm super interested in this. I recently left my job teaching in hopes to pursue some of my own things. And I went and I interviewed. My resume was, I choreographed a high school production. I had choreographed a middle school production, and that was it. And then I had done I've choreographed a million dance competition routines and a million dance recital routines. I had never done a whole show. And that's where my career began there. So I did that. And a year later, I got nominated for a Helen Hayes Award. And people started calling me. I mean, that year between, nobody called me. I got no jobs. I was just like teaching dance and like doing what I could and staying inspired by teaching has always been sort of my mechanism towards creating choreography. But once that happened, I started getting phone calls and I started getting noticed and I started working. And I spent, I don't know, about 6 years in DC. It's a pretty substantial choreography career, mostly in smaller theaters. So I felt ready to move to New York. The truth of DC theaters, it's really awesome and it's really amazing, but the bigger houses tend to hire their choreographers out of New York. So it's like, if I want to work at those places, I'm going to move. And I am going to pursue regional theater in a broader scope and pursue New York in a broader scope. Moved here, I worked on some cruise ship shows for a while, and then was sort of like ramping up to really step into some awesome opportunities, and the industry shut down as we know it.
So what is it like being a choreographer, being a person too, just in general in New York City during this time?
It's really interesting. I was actually just having this conversation with one of my friends that there's like I feel that we wear like a badge of honor that we're in
Yeah.
New York right now. And the journey that the city has gone through, and it doesn't look the same here. I live in Brooklyn. Brooklyn has felt very warm and comforting during this time, and really, for all intents and purposes, like never really felt like it died. And I use that really in jest, like nothing died in New York, but New York is different. And the sort of dismantling of the theater industry, I've seen a lot of friends leave. I know someone who this time last year was on Broadway and now has moved down south and is driving for FedEx. And like, these are really honorable things to do to make a living right now, because we don't know when this is coming back. And it keeps getting pushed and it keeps getting pushed. And honest to God conversation is, we all kind of need to prepare for it to never return to what it was before. And there's a part of me that feels really nostalgic and sad for that. And then there's a part of me that feels really excited for when it does come back, how we can reimagine specifically Broadway. And that broader conversation, yes, best8 is driven towards incubating choreography for film, but the bigger goal is also to really take action on this bigger conversation about diversifying the Broadway community and having points of view that are different from what we've seen for what I've always known Broadway to be. Very white, very cis. And yes, we have two white females talking right now. And I know that that comes from a place of privilege. And part of the reason why you and I are here and working in this industry is because we grew up in a situation that allowed us to. My parents could afford to send me to train as a dancer for my entire life, a very, very expensive journey, and a lifelong journey towards where I am now. So over 30 years of training. And yes, there's scholarship programs and there are opportunities for people, but that is assuming that they have access to it at any point. So using that place of privilege and that given that gift by my parents to uplift people around me that maybe haven't had that opportunity, and maybe aren't sitting in the same positions that you and I sit. And to me, that's one of the most important aspects of what happens moving forward, be it through best8 or entertainment, period.
I think that's really admirable too. I think a lot of people right now, well, everyone's journey is different, right? So we sort of all had that like grieving moment that we talk about all the time. And I feel like you moved quickly. You knew, hey, this sucks, and everybody was there. But you didn't hang on too long. And I think that is just something that I think we could all be inspired by. So that being said, I mean, best8 is in its building phases. What has best8 done so far?
Yeah, best8 is totally like a little tiny infant right now. Really, and like an infant, takes up all my time and energy and keeps me from sleeping. So when they say like something is your baby, this is what this is. Yeah, I mean, I really, it feels like I really jumped on things quickly because that's the way I am. We say like the hustle is real, but like the hustle is reality. Like that's actually what this industry is. My dad always says you can't catch the bus if you're not running for it. And sometimes I tell people that and they're like, well, you could catch it if you're on time. And I'm like, understood. You gotta be so literal.
I like that saying. Your dad has good stuff to say.
My dad has good sayings. I have a lot of, I've told you other ones before, like keep your head up and act like you belong. Like there's just something about chasing this dream. If I have been chasing this dream for, most of my 35 years, then I am not going to sit around and wait for it to come back, because I've never waited for it before. I wasn't sitting at home twiddling my thumbs and wondering how could I be a significant contribution to choreography and creation of theater. So right now, best8 has produced our first film, Shoop, which dropped in September, and I'm in rehearsals for my next film. I'm working with a co-choreographer. I'm working with a Latinx videographer. We are working with 6 dancers from very various backgrounds and, you know, shapes, sizes, colors, all the things. Again, it's really, really important to me that the people we watch performing reflect from every aspect of our lives what our country looks like. One of the things I do love about Washington, D.C. theater is that it has always been a really diverse and really inclusive place. We see women with figures that look like my figure or your figure or anybody's figure rather than just like that Broadway body. So I love that so much. And also I feel that DC has always been a pretty equitable and diverse place for casting. So when I moved to New York, I was sort of surprised by how far behind Broadway can be. And I have some interesting statistics. I'm gonna like pull this up because
Yes.
I recently was working on this application to get fiscal sponsorship. And part of that is just like really understanding as a developing nonprofit, like what are the missing pieces? Like what is the thing that we're filling? Women accounted for only 12% of the top 100 grossing films in 2019 as directors. So that's the Hollywood version.
Yeah.
And people of color, 40%, who are 40% of the US population, were only 14.4% of those directors in those top grossing films. And then one of the things that was really interesting to me was on Broadway, this is in 2018, I believe, females made up 24% of choreographers and 13% of directors. And this is the one that really struck me, is the last Broadway season, and this is according to SDC, which is the union that I belong to, Stage Directors and Choreographers Society, there was only one Black director hired under a Broadway contract for the entire season, and there was no Black choreographers. That's, I believe, the 2018 cycle. So that's a really, those are really significant numbers of what's lacking in the bigger industry. Also considering how many women dance, it's always been surprising to me for so much of my career how often I was the only woman in the room, and how often there was no people of color, no Black people, no Indigenous people in a space of on the production team.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you bring up that point too, and how you know, it's not just the cast, it's also the creative team and who's like working on it and who gets, you know, artistic say and who gets to make decisions. And I love that part about best8. Probably the most out of all of it is that you want to fund not just, you know, dancers to come dance for videos, but you also want to give opportunity for other artistic voices in addition to dance. So that means like choreographers and, as you said, videographers, etc. And that to me is brilliant. I mean, where else are people doing that? I just don't think it exists right now.
I mean, I think the cool thing is like I am seeing more I'm seeing more young people really diving into this. There's a like Broadway for Equal Justice. There's different organizations that have sort of like spun from like 2020 isn't just COVID. 2020 is also Black Lives Matter. There's so much, we are like in just this stirred up tornado of events and emotions and things happening in our country right now. And all of it is really relevant. And the other thing is, from an entertainment point of view, people are lacking being able to go see theater. So there's an aspect of best8 that's also about really reaching digital audiences. Like you'll be able to see all best8 content from your at-home device. And that's the world we're living in right now. And to me, there's another opportunity within that to be sort of engaging the next generation of people who are taking in the performing arts, the next audience, so to speak, and broadening the audience of, you know, maybe there's people that have not been able to go see a live dance performance because they can't afford it or they can't get to that location. Now we're making that so accessible. And that's the cool thing about performing arts is like this all happened. And there was so many ways that we could be taking all of this in. And I think that moving forward and continuing that happening is really what the next wave is. And that's what best8 is part of, is what so many organizations are trying to do, is reach their audience still, and find a way to make money doing it. We don't know how that happens. That's, that's a down the road conversation. It's like, how do we keep continuing to put out content the way that the theater industry and the dance industry has, and continue to build the industry itself? And part of best8 is giving people jobs as well, paying my dancers, paying my choreographers, paying videographer, and putting money into the industry. Dancers have been hit really, really hard by COVID, as we already talked about.
So long term, and you touched on it a little bit, but what does best8, like in 10 years, like how does it function? Are there like seasons? Are there like, what's your dream right now? Because you spend all day thinking about it, I'm sure. So in 10 days, woof, 10 years, what does that look like for you?
I don't really know. Despite how much of like an engine I am, and sort of the go, go, go all the time, I'm really right now just trying to get this off of its feet. And it's like every day is a new day and a new opportunity to accomplish something within the bigger picture. But I think ultimately the goal is to create best8, the nonprofit, and for best8 to provide education. And I want to like be really cautious about how I use that word. This is not, my goal isn't to create a dance school or anything of that nature, but to provide access to information, I guess is a better way, to pre-professional and professional actors, dancers, choreographers, artists, performing artists specifically, of how to do this thing that we do. So this interview right now is the first of a series of the best8 interviews that I hope to do with people I've known in the industry for a long time who have really made waves their whole career, and say, hey, how did you do this thing as the person that you are? And what can you tell us about your experience? And what can you tell us about what's happening within the industry? So having these sort of candid conversations with other choreographers, directors, we want to talk to someone who's in casting specifically, with this direction we're moving towards like diversifying what people look like on stage. What does that mean for a casting director? So that's a piece of it that will continue to grow and shape. I know for certain that best8 will happen in cycles, similar to any choreography lab that's sort of out there right now. And there's not many of them. I was just having this conversation with a friend who does oversee an entire choreography lab that I've participated in before, and we were both talking about how few of these opportunities there really are for choreographers. So becoming lab cycles that culminate in video and film. So choreographer will be able to come in, have X number of hours of rehearsal time, X number of dancers, produce a film, and that be the culmination of their cycle, and potentially be doing anywhere between 4 and 6 cycles a year. And that's really ambitious from a financial point of view, but that's what I'm doing this year. We will have, by the time this is done, there'll be 6 films that happened in the course of the 365 days that will pass. So as the
Wow,
kids,
slacker.
yeah. And then I'm not going to
say.
choreograph all the steps. I'm really looking forward to like the next phase of where a choreographer could be coming in and creating for a film, and doing what I love to do, which is mentoring people and just being in a space with them, and talking about what we do and how we create and what needs to happen in a rehearsal, what needs to happen anywhere. Like there's so much that we've learned, and you too, Dani, have learned by being in the room. I knew absolutely nothing the first day of rehearsal for that show at Keegan Theater. I knew nothing. I never heard of a sits probe. I had never heard of any of it. I didn't do pre-pro. I just showed up and I made steps up, and it worked out. but it's not like that, you know, all the time. And I am grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful for people who took me under their wing as well early in my career. And we are really only as good as the people we surround ourselves with. But if we're living during this time where we can't surround ourselves with people, how can we continue to build and network and create opportunity? And it came from a selfish need. I wanted to be making things. So here we are.
Not selfish.
No, I mean,
I mean, you were like, I need this.
Yeah.
But then you were also like, also, I want to bring everyone else along with me. So yeah, very cool.
Like the high that I chase on working on shows is the high of that finished product. It's not the high of looking on stage and saying, I made up every dance step that's there. It's literally the high of seeing something come to fruition, a completion, and see it happening in front of an audience of people. That to me is what's magical and what we're all missing. I don't think anybody's missing doing a two-step in the back or kicking their face, and warming up and getting injured and all of that stuff. We miss the high of the accomplishment of the thing, of the show, of the piece, of the production. And doing this right now is giving me some of that. So that's what I mean when I say it's selfish. I'm selfishly creating these things to be, getting the adrenaline of being in a creative space.
Yeah. And if anyone saw Shoop, you can see maybe that the audience is just a little different. It's like random people walking down the street with boxes of whatever it was.
Right. And that was an adventure. Filming outside in Bushwick was an adventure. I learned a lot. And similar to like how much I learned every time I stepped into a theater and started working on a show. I learned so much every time, you step into a space and you start creating with dancers, period. Like what works, what doesn't work, and finding how to get past the stuff that doesn't work to get the end result regardless, right? Because the clock's ticking, time to go is now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what can we do to sort of help you get best8 up off the ground? One thing you're doing right now is wearing a fantastic sweatshirt. I'd love to know more.
I totally am. Well, the first thing that you can do is give me a ton of money. No.
Great.
With NYFA or NYFA, as they're lovingly called, best8 is an artist project, and we have an artist page on their website right now. I will be sharing it all over my social media and our best8 social media as soon as I really understand it more. I have an orientation for that coming next week, and that's where substantial donations can be made. It is all tax deductible because the donation is made to NYFA, which is a nonprofit, and they're able to sponsor all of these projects so that we get all the perks of being a nonprofit, which is really amazing. So that's one way. Another way is I am selling best8 swag. I've got on the best8 crew sweatshirt. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen it. So follow best8bk, follow the Rizdiz, follow Dani Ebbin, follow us all, or Ebbin Flow, I think is your name, or yeah.
Yeah.
We'll link all these things for you.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to go to my website and shop for this. And 100% of the proceeds goes to the best8 Artist Project. So every bit of money that I make off of anything I sell is just getting dumped back into rehearsal space, paying dancers, paying my videographer, and filming locations. That's it. It's creating a way for us to create some stuff. And that's how you can contribute. There will be, I'm working on other ways that I can sort of ignite funding in exciting ways, including Patreon, which I'm still understanding. But you'll be able to become a member of our Patreon page, and through membership have access to things like this conversation. Eventually, these conversations will no longer be available streaming on Facebook or posted on Instagram or on our YouTube page, but will be something that you need to subscribe to and make a monthly donation to be able to have access to this information, which is why I really want to dive into like, how do you get there in this industry? And for a small $5 a month, someone could sign up and be constantly getting these resources to them. So again, these are the pipe dreams, but right now, buy some swag from the Best8 swag store, and check out the NIFA website and look for Best8 and send a donation my way. And trust me when I say your money is going towards something really cool. I'm definitely looking at ways that people will be able to sponsor individual dancers. So your donation could literally sponsor John Doe in the next Best8 film, or you could sponsor a choreographer. There'll be opportunities for some synergy in advertising. If a corporate sponsor wants to step up, your name will go on our videos. And one thing I can tell you is that dancers have a lot of followers on Instagram. So if I've got this next video coming up, I've got 6 dancers in the video, 2 choreographers, a videographer, I have you, I have the location that has donated the space for us to be filming. And all of those places can put those videos out and be seen by many, many people. So there's some great opportunities for like corporate partnership and sponsorship. So that's what's next. And if you know anything about this kind of stuff and you want to hit me up, check out rachelleighdolan.com, find my contact information, and read more about what we're doing. And you know, the way out is through, right? So the way to get to this is by going through it and figuring it out as I go, to be honest.
I love it. Well, as Rachel said, we'll link everything that you need to be able to support and follow and stay up to date. And we will definitely do that. So thanks. This has been awesome. We'll do it again.
I know
real
you
soon.
said it at the beginning, but Dani is our casting director, and Dani is also helping me tremendously with sort of getting this up and rooted. So if you don't know Dani Ebbin, get to know her, because you've got it, kiddo.
You're a star.
You're a star.
Follow us on social media and send us lots of money.
Follow us on social media is really the biggest thing that you can do right now. Period. End of story. It costs you no dollars, but it helps. So follow, like, subscribe, as they say.
Love it.
We did it.
Have an amazing night. Woo!
Yeah.